thinking about the presentation, and I thought of my experience in virtual worlds, and that I'd started quite early on, and I thought I'd try and give an overview of where I started from and what I've seen in the industry. So trying to give you lessons learned across the time that I've been involved. Okay, so today I think of the virtual world platform as almost entirely wrong. We've got all these tools inside of it. They're absolutely fantastic, but we've ended up creating these jack of all trades type platforms, and that's not where things are headed with the web. There's a lot of the new breed is very niche focused, and so they're doing very well at what they do. So I'm just going to start with bad news. So there was a lot of money put into virtual worlds back in the around 2006 through 2008. Some people were putting money in earlier, and others were putting in money in the 90s as well. Well, a lot of that money that got spent on platforms just disappeared. It didn't go anywhere, unfortunately. So we saw a lot of casualties, and some of them were great companies with great technology. Unfortunately not here today. Some people are still in the industry and have gone on to do new and interesting things that are still relevant. But it's been hard yakka. And so I want to sort of address that first. I think part of the reason why this has happened is because much of the promise that we offered in virtual worlds has actually ended up being taken up by the web. So we showed the way, but it's led into the web itself. So I want to ask the question, why virtual worlds now? Given that the old vision has stumbled, what are we going to do in 2013? First of all, I want to go back in time. So I started as a bit of a Dungeons and Dragons kid, and it was fantastic to be a team of people sitting around a table, imagining a virtual environment. And I remember when that moved on to these choose your own adventure books, and this was astounding that you could buy an adventure in a book and then deciding at certain pages to go, okay, if I want to go down that passage, I choose page 40. If I want to actually open the chest, I'm going to choose page 73. Well, I then discovered, I got onto computers in 81. I was, at that point, I guess 13. And the great thing about being involved in PCs at that point in time was there wasn't a lot of programs, so you really had to actually learn the program, or a lot of people did. And a few years later, I think it was 83, I was in a university and they didn't know what to do with me there as a kid of 15. And they said, oh, we've got this game on the mainframe, and they showed me how to get into it, and it was Colossal Caves. And I went home that night and I started programming my first virtual world. I think we called them adventure games at that point. So, even back then we knew, or it felt like that this was something new. Even though you weren't choosing your avatar or anything like that, you were still choosing how you were going to play, how you would address situations that would come up in the game. And because I was programming, I got to create these games. Also, I have down there that the community at that point was connected through PC magazines. But it wasn't just that. That was the kind of global audience. More locally, though, people had user groups. So I'm sure many of you would remember the user groups. Any of you were sort of over 40 and were involved in computers at that time. They were very, very useful. Okay, well, 10 years on, by this point I'd moved into advertising and television and doing a lot of narrative and film and this sort of thing. Games were starting to become particularly interesting. You had Habitat driving new ways of doing things in virtual worlds. So we had a graphical virtual world essentially for the first time. what's interesting is that user numbers in Habitat, and then it became Worlds Away and V-Zones, got up to, well, certainly in the early days there was like 10,000 people there, it was making millions of dollars. I can't remember whether that was a year or a month or whatever. But there was real revenue. They had virtual goods sales. Still, again, the concepts were already embedded that we were going to explore later on. Well, that's way too small, so you probably can't read that, but there you go, 10 million revenue within the first year or so. So there was tremendous interest in the audience in this sort of an experience. And this was at a point in time where we didn't have any. It was on CompuServe. So in the CompuServe audience was relatively small. 1993 was also the year that Doom came out, and really that changed gaming incredibly, because it was the introduction of the first-person shooter in a 3D environment. And I remember, for one thing, when those monsters used to throw fireballs at us, we'd be sitting there, somebody playing, and all of us would sort of lean. You know? And you look at those graphics, and they're so pixelated, it's hard to imagine. And as Dan said in the previous discussion, kids today would just not want to play that. Well, actually, it's not quite true, you know, because we've got Minecraft, we've got various things that are coming in, retro gaming. But at the same stage, there is this kind of snobbery around graphics, and I personally want to push back on that. I think, you know, fidelity is not everything. We had enough to totally immerse ourselves at that point in time. And it was also enough to get the feeling that we were inside of an environment. We're walking around in there, and what if the monsters weren't there? Right? Couldn't we do something else other than just gaming in these environments? That was a nascent kind of thought that was coming up at that point in time. Okay, so jumping forward another 10 years, this is when I started actually employing my first staff member, but I'll get to that. And I was really into virtual worlds by this point. I thought I'd put my money where my mouth was. There was a lot of opinions at that point in time. And one of them was about, you know, virtual worlds were really going to be the future of the web. And we made a lot of assumptions around that. Virtual worlds were social and the web wasn't. The web was focused on delivering pages. That obviously was not quite right, but in the end, but that's what we were thinking at the time. And there was a tremendous number of things that we thought virtual worlds had that the web didn't have and wasn't likely to be delivering anytime soon. Now, if you look through that list, things like microeconomy and gamification, I mean, we didn't call it gamification at that point in time, but there was already quite a lot of work in that sort of space, and the whole emergent behavior and social identity. These were so important to virtual worlds. But I think that what's happened is, you know, they've crossed over. So along came YouTube. I think it's amazing. If you think that in 2003, I was walking around talking to venture capitalists, and when I talked about users actually were going to be participating in generating these 3D environments, they thought I was crazy, because they were like, people are not going to put that amount of effort. The concept of UGC, or user-generated content, didn't actually exist. And it really didn't exist until 2007. And, okay, so that's 6 years ago. So how much the world has changed, because we've got to the point that we expect that users can interact with brands, they can interact with you, and that's just our world today. But okay, you only have to go back to 2005. YouTube was just getting started, and that really created a new environment for us. And that particular image down there of Sai and his new video gentleman, 98 million hits that was after 2 days. I checked it again, I think 24 hours ago, that was 3 days, and it was up to 120 million views of his video. I mean, what an amazingly global experience we've got going now. Okay, so 2007, the virtual worlds were really bubbling at this point in time, and this is a slide from a venture partners fund that they created just for virtual worlds, and you can see that, you know, Web 3.0, or whatever you're going to call it, was all about Second Life and their Club Penguin, etc. Now, Club Penguin sold for $700 million in that year, so they did just fine. But a lot of the good ones never got an exit anyway. Okay, so we had this idea of a metaverse paradigm, and to a degree, ideas around the metaverse are still there. And I have to say, I absolutely loathe the idea. Why? Because it's such a mess. If you're going to allow user-generated content, it is okay if you've got World of Warcraft where everything's locked down. You've got an economy that is tuned to developers' control. But if you've got a metaverse that's user-generated, well, for one thing, it's going to be incredibly large. So it's going to feel like a parking lot. You're just walking through this endless environment that stretches on and on and on. So we're reintroducing the problems of the tyranny of distance, essentially, even if, of course, we can teleport around the place. And one of the hilarious things about the metaverse is that you have to police it, you have to govern it. You know, so because you've got lots and lots of different tribes in that environment. That's not exactly how the web works. The web is not a metaverse. The web is a whole set of individual communities of practice, communities of interest, going to certain pages, getting involved, often in private environments. So Facebook, your Facebook is not my Facebook. Your friends are not my friends. And that's a really important thing. I don't want to live in an environment where everybody can get access to me. And they got that right, and we, with our metaverse concept, didn't really nail it. Another aspect was there was never any on-ramp. This is probably the fundamental thing that we all got wrong. And it's something that we still have to get right in everything that we do. It is a real challenge if, for instance, an organisation that hasn't been involved in this sort of thing, they're interested in doing training in virtual worlds, but they say, hey, we've got the money, we want to start on Monday, and we can't get them on because they haven't got the right hardware. Their networks aren't set up right. It's going to be a hell of a challenge because they need to engage with other organisations where we can't get into their IT departments, all that kind of thing. That has to be totally solved. And of course we're working on it, but I'll get to that. So this is one of my personal rules: collaboration hates friction. In the end, if collaborators can't meet together, if you can't get all the key decision makers in an environment, you're not going to get an outcome, and you're going to have to reschedule, and that's going to waste everybody's time. We all know it from everything that we do. And what is so frustrating is when the problem is technical. Okay, so I realized that my slides are not actually appearing totally on the screen, so I just realized that now. So you've been missing the tops of all my slides, it looks like. Up the top of this, it says the mum test. Okay, so something that I've often used is the mum test. Am I right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually okay. All right. Anyway, I think I'm wrong. I just got worried. Okay, so the mum test. If we used to get our mums, put them in front of the computer and test them on whether or not they were able to use the software without us explaining how it actually worked. And if they felt like this bird was a fail, right? So they didn't want to be jumping through hoops, And when you look at the mum test and you compare these three brands that we all know, Skype, just on its usage, has done incredibly well. You know, 2005, about 3% of all international calls was being handled by Skype. Already a tremendous number. But 2012, it's a third of all international calls are handled through that. That means all calls, right, internationally. It's competing against your wide phone, etc. I think that's phenomenal. Since Microsoft has bought it, just in one quarter they had a 50% call growth. In one quarter, quarter-on-quarter growth. So to me, that's clearly passing the mum test without having gone out there and checked. I mean, my mum uses it, and she's 79, and I'm sure a lot of people use that. Now, the explanation why Second Life fails really comes down to the fact that both Facebook and Skype are free and enable mum to see her grandchildren. You know, because when we get down to it, did we really want to see a 3D avatar? That's a fundamental question for our industry when we focus on 3D training. I'm not saying there's not a place for it. I still believe in it, but I'm just saying these are the challenges. Another challenge, creativity is not mainstream. When we think it is, we're generally wrong. We have to simplify the experience. Casual experiences are mainstream. Minecraft gets it right. Kids are loving it. It's incredibly easy. If you don't know about Minecraft and you've got kids, worth checking out. It's incredibly easy to create stuff. Oh, by the way, if you think, okay, it's not appropriate for kids, maybe that's true, but they're actually working on a business model that's about creating your own private environments. So I say that as a caveat, because otherwise it's a bit of an open play environment. Okay, so there's been a lot of bombs that have gone off. The web changed, became social. It actually scaled up really, really well. Mobile platforms don't really suit social virtual worlds with avatars. My daughter, she's 4, she loves to play on those games that you can dress your avatar. Loves it. But is that relevant to having her walk? Does she want to walk around a Second Life type environment? I just don't see the driver. And there was a lot of reality that got imposed. In our industry here around government, military, I don't know that most of us probably had a hard time. I know we had a hard time towards the end of 2010 when the government was struggling to pass its budgets and projects were falling over left, right and centre. And a lot of organisations that you saw on that list didn't make it because of the GFC. Another bomb that went off really for anyone who was building their own hardware is Unity totally commoditized the gaming tech environment. So if you had a game engine, it just, a digit fell off the value of it overnight when Unity said that their base platform was going to be handed out free of charge. Also, we lost such an important platform to going and getting our interactivity across the web and across mobile when the decision was to not go with Flash on iOS. So that, I think, is a good thing. It was a good decision, but at the same stage, that was our go-to platform for getting onto the web, really. Getting onto mobile and being able to reuse the content. And you think of, if any of you are SCORM developers, hello, right? Okay, are there any SCORM content developers out there? Are any of you madly doing HTML5 conversions of your content? You're not, okay. Are you going to? And it's all because of him. Right? And it works fine, right? It ain't broke. But it's broken. You can't get onto that mobile device. Okay. Does this affect you? Okay, this I thought was interesting. I just read this recently by Bruce Sterling, a science fiction author, who was writing in something called The Well. In 2012, internet, PC business, telephones, Silicon Valley, the media, these things are not important anymore. All we need to study is Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft. Isn't that phenomenal? So it's been, the consolidation is so important that I think, even the US government, the military have to look and think, none of us are big enough to control these guys in terms of their tech stack. None of us can really get what we want. If they go a different way, it's like what happened with Flash. I mean, what part of the US government wanted Flash off iOS? I think, given the investment, they all wanted it on. Yeah? It's not your choice anymore. It's a different world. Okay, so what the hell was I doing during all this? So, 2003, I hired a developer, gradually built that up to around a dozen or so. A couple of years ago, we were bigger. We went down again around after the 2010 sort of collapse of various projects. But we float around that, and I'm happy with that for right now, where we are as an industry. We wanted to utilize the web, but deliver a lot more, because the web was missing great caching, smart objects, replayable experiences, and a whole lot of extra things. Kind of micro-chunking that you could share out. And, well, we got part of the way there. I started with a kind of design view and thinking about changing the way the front end of Windows looked, so you could see it as a 3D space. You could throw folders out into it. And this was a personal, private experience, this space that you could customize. Well, we got this far. We got a demo out of a space, and I could show off changing television and then clicking on the TV screen to actually go to that location and this sort of thing. Playing out a few ideas. Didn't get funding out of that, but thought there was something useful in there. So we got started on what was going to be needed to be built for this kind of stuff, to do it properly. Because we were thinking Quake as a web, you can think of it like that. So we started building an infinite corridor system so that anyone could have files that were linking to your file, and therefore someone could navigate through these various virtual environments. We went on to establish a proper formalized way of doing that, so that you could seamlessly connect environments together, turning worlds into widgets. Any world inside another world was a widget, making it so that a distributed web of worlds could handle failure. Forgotten all these little animations. Scramble on. Okay, yeah. And then creating a markup language to be able to arrange all the multimedia. And what I was trying to get was, I wanted it to be so meta that a deaf person could be speaking to somebody with hearing impairment. And they're essentially communicating in their own modality. And the metadata is able to handle that translation or that expression in whatever form needed to occur, and handle various types of interactions. These days we're looking at workflows and how to extend IML so that it can support narrative structures that can be composed. We created something called Metaphoric, which is an open format for creating discoverable content. We created Open Avatar. Now I've got a movie here, so Can we, I don't know if I can press it. Can you try and just press the middle of the screen there?
OpenAvatar is an open specification developed by VastPark to streamline the creation of 3D models using discrete components. OpenAvatar consists of Collada files, archetype files, DNA files, and the Collada merger. Collada files are the building blocks of 3D models and can be used to represent individual parts, like a head or an arm, and they can be used to represent the whole model entirely. Collada is used because it is an open standard XML schema and can be exported by various graphic software applications such as Maya and 3ds Max. Collada can also be converted into formats which can be used across multiple platforms such as VastPark, Second Life, and Unity 3D. Archetype files dictate what each model must have and what they could have. For example, the human model must have a head. However, they may have optional parts, like a briefcase. Archetype files allow standardization and can be used as a contract to ensure that models are constructed according to a predefined set of rules. Archetypes are not limited to models of humans. They can be used to dictate anything from office chairs to vehicles to dragons. DNA files are the files which contain the final decisions for constructing the model, particularly the Collada files for the parts and the textures, at their corresponding location on the skeleton. Finally, the Collada merger, which is a library written in C#. This automates the process of combining the individual parts into a full model and producing a final Collada file, which can be converted to a runtime version for use on the platform.
Okay, so that's an open source software that's available to developers. So even though we did OpenAvatar and various other things, are avatars necessary? Well, yes, in scenario-based planning, something we focus on as one of the things that does work and is a sensible use of avatars. Where we're going with things, we have not just a virtual world platform these days, we also have a community of practice platform. And so when we look at team response training as an overall sort of architecture, only a piece of it needs to be in 3D. But the whole thing needs to be thought of as a coherent sort of structure because it's a coherent community. We see that we're building there for the learner. This is an open question. It's how do we train decision making? It's a challenge, I think. Something that we've been doing a lot of in the last 18 months or so is turning our ML that's been focused on 3D into something that can work natively on the web using JavaScript, and we're focused on 2D delivery. So it's turning back to the old sort of very simple graphics, and I find that interesting because we've got absolutely no barriers to entry there. Somebody can just use a web browser. There's nothing to download. There's nothing to install. We can punch through firewalls on both sides so people can be getting access straight away. And I think that's a really compelling way of getting people involved. And I feel it is part of the scaffolding, the on-ramp to getting people to the virtual environments and virtual training. So you get them into something like well, for us it's a community of practice, and moving them into these real-time events, and then if they need to be immersed, then immerse them, but don't start 3D. That's a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way. We've done various other demos with technology. All right, so 2013. There's some really fantastic stuff that's happened for us. There's mass market adoption of interaction devices. For instance, Connect, this is actually going back to 2011, I guess. When Connect came out, the first 60 days, it outsold the iPad when it first came out. In fact, if you look at the figures there, 10 million units were sold in the Connect. in the first 60 days, or no, first 2 quarters. Okay, so there's phenomenal interest in these sorts of things, and they're cheap, right? So that's what's important. I've got another video coming up. Here, the brain computer interfaces are really getting ready for mass market, and I wanted to show you a video that just shows how mass market this is going. Can you press play? Because that's stuttering, I'll explain, but the thing on her head is reacting to her thoughts. See where it's going, right? All right, you get the idea. Can't wait for that, right? That's going to be the Christmas present to die for. To give, anyway. Okay, so haptics. Some interesting stuff is already on your phones. The newest phones are giving feedback. The Samsung tablet there. It's got some very interesting tactile response. We've got feelable screens coming where you really feel the roughness of a surface, and it's just there on the slate, right? But you feel like you've got it there, and they're using electrical impulses and stuff to trick you. And sound. This sort of stuff is phenomenal, and it's going to give us a sense of immersion, and it's going to be built into our devices. So, Oculus Rift, Dan actually mentioned it before. I've got a video here just to show you somebody's reaction to it. It's got a very wide field of view.
So, what do you think?
It's so real, and it's a picture in here, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, Mommy.
That's pretty cool, right?
It sure is. And you know what? Is it my eyes or are the leaves blowing?
They're blowing. They're right. You see it.
Oh,
Okay, the
man.
computer shows you what she sees through her.
No, but
It's
Richard, when he's
stereoscopic
taking it
device.
just for the
No, that's all 3D.
Holy mackerel. This is unbelievable.
Isn't that the most incredible thing you've ever seen?
Oh, I'll remember to use it all the rest of my life after this. I can't believe it. I went all the way up to Tuscany and back.
Okay, so unfortunately, because, again, it's not going backwards. She's just moving her head. It's completely natural for her to get around.
Oh, man.
All right, you get the idea. So isn't that fantastic that you can give that to an 80-year-old woman, and it's clearly passing the mum test. She's just put it on and she's getting it. She's got the experience. She doesn't have to interpret anything. She's acting naturally. We've got some interesting extensions to our devices with things like Pebble. It's an interesting watch that plugs into your iPhone and your Android device, Google Glass. We're going to have a lot of AR-related information coming at us. I thought this was pretty cool. The real reason to have Google Glasses, right? You may not have heard of this. Perspective Pixel was purchased by Microsoft. These guys should be on your radar. They're making touchscreens up to 82-inch touchscreen, and it's multi-touch. You can have something like 4 or 6 stylus pens writing at the same time. This is not like most screens that are out there. It's full touch, and it's extraordinary. I mean, it knows, if you put your arm against there, it knows where your fingers are against the rest of your hand. I don't want to be an ad for Perspective Pixel, but it's beautiful. Now this is augmented collaboration. Microsoft have got a project like this. I don't know what Apple's one is, but everyone's going to be doing this. Essentially, we're not going to be delivering to to one device. Our experiences are going to be going to all the devices. As Dan mentioned, we know if we've got kids under 20 that they don't consume media through one screen. I mean, my princess, when she was 2.5, she'd try and turn on the TV, have a computer going, and have a laptop going as well if I wasn't monitoring it. I mean, because she wanted all those inputs. It would allow her certain media on one of the screens, she stopped looking at it. I thought that was really, really interesting, the ability to just control stuff like that. Well, we as designers of experiences, we need to be utilizing what's coming next in terms of augmented collaboration to allow for multi-screen delivery of our experiences. So, SCORM developers, get back to it. So just finalizing this slide, this stuff is so cheap, right? It's so affordable. We're seeing prices that are going to mean that we can put it on everybody's machine. Also quality. I mean, I explained before that I'm not one for fidelity in the sense of chasing it right out of the ballpark. You look at the ones on the left, and you've got this curve. You see the uncanny valley curve, and you see right before the bottom of the curve is the Angelina Jolie image. I mean, if anyone saw that movie, I don't know if you were like me, it was weird to look at. But Avatar was fantastic. The one on the right, that's real-time rendering. I think that's stunning. But why are we adding the cost? Right? It's a real training question, a real learning question. Why do we need that content to look as good as that on the right-hand side? Because I tell you, you're going to be paying through the teeth for it. Maybe not in the long run, because we're going to do it all with shaders. As David A. Smith said to me yesterday, it's all going to go shaded. Well, absolutely right. And it's going to get cheaper that way. But there's still going to be a cost for quite a while. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that real-time 3D can do now. Again, why do we need it? I know we need it in military scenarios, but in healthcare, for instance, they don't need it. Because what are we competing with? We're competing with the current simulators are a mannequin on a table. And we have to replicate that in effective ways to allow for team training. So something that I've become interested in is declarative decision making. It's about forcing users to express exactly what they are thinking, what they're wanting to do. For instance, where they're looking. We want to be able to measure absolutely everything. If we can get them to declare everything, that's really powerful. We want to simplify the user inputs. Left click. People understand that. There's no training involved. It may even narrow the distance between people who've done a lot of games and people who haven't. Right? Can we capture user intent that way? Well, we think so. Can we actually compare the user data with expert data and then be able to give automated feedback on where there's a difference between how this learner has done versus the various expert learners, expert users. We may even be able to pick up on different trends at different times. Gamification, going back to that long list of things that virtual worlds could do, but the web's doing. Gamification is one of them, and well, great, it's sprung up everywhere. And it's driving a lot of experiences out there, and we need to do more of it. So how are we going to beat Skype? Well, the web definitely passes the mum test, because she's already using a browser, and it's already around her. With things like WebRTC, web developers are actually getting a platform to deliver audio and video. It's not quite there yet. In the meantime, for instance, we use Flash where we can, and we convert where we can't. So Skype's going to have to open up and give us access to their presence service or become irrelevant. That's a pretty good thing. I see the future as an ergonomic web. Essentially, we're all developing little technology stacks that can all interoperate in various ways. And from a consumer point of view, everything gets personalized. Essentially, I get to bring people into my reality if I wish to. So it's not shared, it's shareable. And I think if we can get that distinction in our heads, we're not in Second Life, right? That's shared. We're in something that we choose to share how we wish to. Now, in terms of that, we get to choose to lock down things. We get to have our own communities of practice. We get to have a lot of control. And that's something that we all want. I think that we'll more and more be building what we want in the way that we search it, by what we express it as our interests, as we do when TiVo first came out, learned what we wanted and then gave us more of that. Well, the same with the web itself. I'm going to rip through these. Widgets are definitely part of that, and they'll be viral. So the new vision is using things like microformats, Scorn 2, Experience API, all that kind of good stuff that you guys are thinking about. Very important. Things like web pipes. A cool little one is if this, then that, but there's a lot of different things out there that can be used. Basically allow you to connect different things together very easily. And so the virtual world itself becomes just a native aspect of the web. Okay, so I hope you can satisfy your users as easily as these guys. Thank you very much.